Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's interview. Today, I'm really excited about my guest. It is none other than two-time Xfinity Series champion Randy Lajoie. Randy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
That's awesome to hear. I was just telling Randy about how the pre-pandemic, I was up there doing my interview with Hunter Smith, so I got to I got to visit the illustrious LaJoy or Joy of Seeding facility. So it's a tourist destination. Um,
Well, we could house a couple different projects if we have to.
so So starting off, looking at your career, you had an awesome career in NASCAR. Is there a win or a moment that stands out to you as your proudest moment, or just your favorite moment?
Well, you always remember the ones that got away, the ones that God, I wanted that trophy
Hmm.
and never got it. So there's a handful of trophies that I never received, but I when I early on in my career, you don't never know. You don't never know you're not going to win again
Hmm.
because that's you're selfish and you're greedy and you got to be something of good, otherwise you wouldn't win. There's some cockiness that goes in there, and I don't know. I mean, they were all good. I mean,
Hmm.
I enjoyed all of them, but it depended on who was in the mirror. Because that made a great day a better day.
Hmm. That's awesome. That is something that if I'm not careful, I just get looped into when I think of the what ifs in the sport. And you bring up such a great moment is when you just start going back and thinking, man, if I would have won this race, or I guess even over the course of a career, if you think, man, if I would have taken this ride, or if I wouldn't have taken this ride, or whatever. So,
Well, I mean, that's something that I'm not sure if it's a destiny, but there's
hmm,
always forks in the road, and
yeah.
you have decisions to make. And sometimes they're made for you, and if you just happen to go down the right road, you're okay. Okay, I mean, I'm not sure I would change anything. The road I traveled on, it sure and hell wasn't paved with gold and silver,
Hmm.
but looking at what's out there today and what's in the world, I mean, we're very fortunate to have what I had growing up.
Yes, sir. So, along with racing, you're also known for your racing seat company, the Joy of Seating. How did you get into designing and manufacturing the racing seats?
Well, I mean, this is something that, my dad was a racer,
Hmm.
so my dad was racing in the early '70s, and we went to a car show in Hartford, Connecticut. Me, my older brother, and my dad, and my dad met Mark Donahue. Mark Donahue was one of Penske's first drivers in the Trans Am Series, in the Formula One series. He got killed doing Formula One. But Daytona and NASCAR, I mean, he was IndyCar guy. I mean, he was Penske's first most versatile drivers, I do believe. He was an awesome race car driver. But my dad looked at his car, and the car that he just won the Trans Am Championship in, and he said, "Boy, that seat looks very comfortable." And he sit
Hmm.
in it, and he was the same size. And Mark says to my dad, "I'll sell you one." So my dad bought one, and he made it fit into a modified because the car that Mark had it in was a little bit more spacious than the modified cars. So my dad made it fit into a modified. So when I first started modifieds, that's the seat that I had. 1994, I started racing in '78. 1994, NASCAR said no more fiberglass seats. Even though I had a frame around it, and
Hmm.
I had did mine correctly because me crashing in a fiberglass seat, sometimes it broke if you hit something hard. So I knew I had to stiffen it up and brace it up. And so once they said no fiberglass seats in 1994, I had to go out and somehow take a flat sheet of aluminum and make it fit your butt and make
Hmm.
it fit your shoulders, make it fit your back, because the one that Mark Donahue had was a form fitted fiberglass, so it fit your butt, it fit your back, it fit your shoulders. So 100% of your body was in contact with the seat. Well, when you sit in other race seats that are square, I mean, it's like a milk crate with a side on it. Your butt's not square. And the fatigue factor and movement factor, and so the more that we found that holding the body, the driver to the seat with less movement, the better that guy's going to be. And so when NASCAR told me I couldn't use fiberglass, nobody in the seat industry wanted to touch what I wanted, a form-fitted seat, because it was too expensive. But that's all I knew, and that's what I wanted. So, needless to say, I started a company. Not sure it's the brightest thing I've done, but I think I've saved a lot of lives, and I've educated the seat industry to get safer and to protect the drivers, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think when it comes to someone's legacy in the sport, and I used to focus on, okay, what did they do on the track? But as I've gotten older, it becomes more of, well, what have they done for the sport outside of it? And, I look at someone like a Dale Jr. and look at, what he did on the track versus how many people now that he has brought, either to the sport or back to the sport with his podcast. And then I look at people like you and just think of, it might not be these race win after race win or whatever, but there's so many people out there that are either doing better because they have, a better seat and they're more confident, they're more comfortable, or their career went on because they made it out of, an accident without a horrible injury or whatever.
And it's too bad, early in my seat career, I went through a handful of funerals, in 5 or 6 years. And that was tough, because I grew up when I was a teenager and lost a bunch of modified guys that I looked up to that raced against my dad. But the modified guys changed things in the car. It made them smaller. It made them softer, so that wasn't the driver didn't take as much as the impact. And I also, put a head and neck restraint on all of them, and that sure does help to keep the neck on with a head and neck restraint. And just the systems in the cars have gotten so much better, because it's not one or two different things. It's probably 5 or 6 different things that help save a life nowadays. That's for sure.
So building off of that, a lot of old school drivers were slow to accept the changes in safety. Whether it was out of comfort or they thought they were
still the same way. You go to any racetrack, pre-pandemic, I went to about 6 racetracks already. And the ones with the gray hair, there is no sense even talking to them, because they've done it their whole life, and I don't have that much money in my whole car. And okay, I hate for you, because you're one hit away of having supper through a straw.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be fun, and if you hit something the wrong way at 30 miles an hour without a system, damn it, you're gonna get hurt.
So is that still something that is carried over to like the younger drivers, or do you see that the most recent generation of drivers or younger drivers in general, that they're quicker to accept the advances in safety?
Well, you got to get to the parents, because a lot of times what I've seen over the years, if the parents buy cars, from another parent that the kid moved over, whatever, you just take for granted that what they had for their kid is what you should have for your kid. So mainly the majority of it is showing the parents. When both my boys were racing, Bandoleros down here in Charlotte, when they were growing up racing those things with Chase Elliott and the Dillon boys and Bubba Wallace, and I would walk through the little McReynolds and say, here, parents, this is what my son's in. This is what this is what your son or daughter's in. Oh, your son looks a whole lot more protected. I said, yeah, you could be. Oh, we didn't know. Okay, well, now you do. So, the most of that is, the kids, once they get to the teen years, they kind of got figured out what they want.
Mm-hmm.
or who they want to copy. They have a favorite driver that whatever that guy uses, they're going to use. So that's a lot of the industry too.
So a lot of current NASCAR fans are familiar with your son Corey Lajoie. What is it like being a former driver with a son who is a driver? Does it help? Is there more friction of trying to step in and say, "Hey, don't make these same mistakes" or whatever? What's that dynamic like?
Well, you just hopefully the foundation that you poured years ago is working, and the people I grew him up around,
Mm-hmm.
influenced him, and there's a bunch of them. A couple of them ain't here no more, but they have huge influences on him, on his work ethic, on how to build stuff. Because he is Corey is one of the most talented. Casey is also, but Corey can build stuff. He can vision stuff, and he's built go karts. He's envisioned 3-wheel trikes. He's built all kinds of different things. Just a very talented fabricator, welder, but he learned that at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And they've seen me doing up dumb things. I'm glad they haven't taken up some of that stuff. But I've always told them to tell the truth, and that has gotten me in trouble a lot because,
Mm-hmm.
and same thing with Corey. If you're pissed off and you're a race car driver, and if something goes wrong with your race car, and it goes wrong 3-4 times, man, it's gonna piss you off. So I mean, that's he gets that very honestly once he gets pissed off. Once the fuse is lit,
Mm-hmm.
I've had to learn to my presentation. I think for the last I've heard that word in the last 15 years more than I did in my first 45. Just because of sometimes I might think before I open my mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Corey does a great job with his podcast. I don't listen to it. I don't know. I just got other things to do during the day.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody tells me he does a great job. I don't do social media. If I'm out at a racetrack somewhere, say, hey, I follow Corey. He's funny. Okay, cool. So I mean, that's cool to hear. That's a whole different avenue that I never had to put up with. We never had social media. We didn't have to worry about that stuff. Luckily we had sponsors, and we had to keep a handful of them happy at the track, and maybe 3 or 4 times a year you go to their functions.
Yeah,
it's not in your face like it is today.
Yeah, I feel for the drivers nowadays because I feel like we put all these microphones up to their face and say, "Well, give us your opinion. What do you think? Who are you?" But then as soon as they give you the answer, you're like, "Well, we don't like that answer," and then you get attacked, for either giving the wrong answer or for not answering. So I feel bad because that's even on these interviews. I've had a couple of people where I've had to explain to them. I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to make a name for myself or to try to like hit someone with some question of, hey, tell me about this race team. Didn't they suck or whatever? And it sucks because there's a lot of drivers that I feel like that's something that when they get, that email or whatever saying, hey, would you want to do an interview? That's the first thing they think of is, well, crap, I got to dodge some kind of... Yeah, I got to dodge some kind of minefield right now where I'm going to end up on Twitter.
For sure. You ain't kidding.
So, well, that was it for my questions. I really appreciate you coming on today, Randy. You were someone that I really enjoyed looking up to, and I first got really into the sport in the early 2000s, and I love Fitz Motorsports, and you drove a little bit for them. We had a local Dollar General, and it was full of your diecast in there. So growing up, you were a big part.
Yeah. Okay, so you're a Tennessee guy?
Mm-hmm.
You're from Tennessee?
Oh no, I'm from South Carolina.
Oh, okay. Dollar Generals they were from Tennessee, weren't they? Yeah.
I think so. I know when we first got one, I guess it must have been 02 or 03, and it was the biggest deal. But like I said, I remember it was the coolest thing because I was like, oh, now we don't have to go drive to Walmart to go find diecast. I can get all of my 34 cars and all. So, well, thanks a lot for coming on today.